Our company requires staff who are more collaborative. My name is Leona. I'm 34 years old, and for the last 5 years, I worked as a project coordinator at Vectrosphere Solutions in Portland. 5 years of overseeing client accounts, juggling timelines, and biting my tongue whenever Ethan made one of his remarks. He served as my supervisor, a position he believed granted him particular liberties. The firm was branching out into Reno. New markets, new customers, new prospects. I had been aiming for an advancement, perhaps leading the team for this project. Instead, Ethan summoned me to his office on a Tuesday morning to inform me about a business trip. Just the two of us, he mentioned, reclining in his chair. We'll have to stay the night, assess the market, connect with potential clients. He gave me that smile I'd grown to despise. Hotels are usually booked solid, though. You know the company budget. We're going to have to share a room. I just stared at him. 5 years of his unwelcome stares, his remarks on my attire, his fabricated reasons to stand unnecessarily close in meetings. I had steered every discussion away, maintained a professional front, and convinced myself it wasn't worth causing a stir. But this crossed a line. That is not an option, I stated. His smile vanished. Pardon me? I said no. I will not be sharing a hotel room with you. He leaned forward, his tone lowering. Leona, I believe you're misinterpreting the requirements of this assignment. This is strictly business, nothing else. Then we can reserve separate rooms. The budget won't stretch that far. In that case, I'm not going. We glared at one another across his desk. I could watch him processing my refusal, plotting his next course of action. In 5 years, I had never outright denied him anything. I had deflected, yes, and redirected, but never a direct refusal. I understand, he said at last. Well, I guess I'll have to rethink your involvement in this project. I nodded and walked out of his office. My hands trembled, but I kept my expression composed. I returned to my desk and attempted to concentrate on the quarterly reports, but I sensed what was coming. The problem with men like Ethan is that they don't take rejection gracefully. They especially don't take it from women they perceive as their property. I had been his subordinate long enough to know he would devise a way to make me regret humiliating him. I just hadn't anticipated it would be so swift. 2 days later, the call came from Human Resources. I began my career at Vectrosphere Solutions immediately after grad school. I had a master's in business administration, was drowning in student debt, and was desperate for a reliable income. The company managed logistical support for industrial companies throughout the Pacific Northwest. It wasn't glamorous, but it was consistent. Ethan had hired me personally. He was the department director at the time, utterly charming throughout the interview. He inquired about my professional ambitions, my 5-year trajectory. He made me feel he saw real potential in me. For the first year, everything was professional. He was an excellent boss, in fact. He assigned me demanding projects and supported me when clients became unreasonable. The remarks began subtly. Small things. You look lovely today, Leona. That shade really compliments your eyes. I rationalized it as harmless workplace chatter. My father always taught me that women in the corporate world needed to be resilient. By the 3rd year, it had intensified. He would manufacture reasons to brush against my shoulder in meetings, stand too near while we looked over paperwork, and pry into my social life and weekend activities. When I became engaged to my boyfriend, Cormac, Ethan's demeanor changed. He grew distant and overly critical. My performance evaluations took a hit. The engagement didn't work out. Cormac and I separated after 2 years, and Ethan somehow learned of it before I mentioned it to anyone at the office. His disposition improved immensely. The flattery resumed. The lingering stares. He started asking me to lunch. Just the two of us, calling them business strategy sessions. I created coping mechanisms. I never stayed late if he was still around. I always left my door ajar during our private meetings. I brought my own coffee to avoid the break room, a place he enjoyed trapping people for conversation. I believed I had the situation under control. My colleagues were aware, but no one spoke up. Beatrix from accounting would offer me pitying glances in staff meetings. Reese from IT would strategically place himself between Ethan and me at company functions, but nobody addressed it directly. That's the way it is in smaller firms. Everyone is aware, but no one wants to be the person to make an issue of it. I should have filed a report on him years ago. I knew it, but I couldn't risk my job. And Ethan was held in high regard by the executive team. He secured new clients, consistently met his goals, and went golfing with the company president. I was expendable. He was not. The Reno assignment was his most audacious move so far. No colleagues, no prying eyes, just the two of us in a hotel room 300 miles away from home. When I refused, I witnessed a shift in his face. The facade cracked for a brief moment, and I saw his true perception of me. Not a colleague, not a professional, just an asset he had been patiently waiting to claim. He had been planning this for months, perhaps years. I had merely accelerated his timeline. Thursday morning, 11:15 a.m. Helene from Human Resources buzzed my line. "Leona, could you please come down to conference room B? We have to discuss your employment." My heart sank, but I maintained a calm tone. "I'll be right down." I saved my files, took a notepad, and went downstairs. Helene was there with Ethan and a man I didn't know, dressed in a high-end suit and carrying a briefcase. "Please, have a seat," Helene said. Her tone was measured, practiced. "This is Damien Voss, from our legal counsel." I sat, keeping my hands clasped and my face impassive. "Leona," Helene went on, "we've been made aware of some interpersonal issues that are impacting your job performance. Specifically, challenges with team collaboration and adherence to managerial directives." I glanced at Ethan. He was studying his hands, portraying the reluctant manager compelled to take action against a difficult subordinate. "I see," I responded. "Could you provide specifics regarding these issues?" The lawyer opened his briefcase, retrieving a folder. "Mr. Reed has recorded multiple instances of insubordination and unprofessional conduct, refusing to take on work assignments, questioning management decisions, fostering a hostile work environment." "Hostile work environment," I echoed. "Yes," Helene affirmed. "We treat these situations with the utmost seriousness. Following a thorough review, we have come to the decision to terminate your employment, effective immediately." I remained seated for a moment, letting it sink in. 5 years of spotless performance evaluations, 5 years of meeting every deadline, handling demanding clients, and supporting my coworkers. And suddenly, I was the one with the problem. "Your attitude issue is disrupting the workplace," Ethan stated, finally meeting my gaze. "We need employees who are more cooperative." Cooperative, that was the word. "I understand," I said. "May I inquire about a severance package?" The lawyer pushed a document toward me. 2 weeks' salary. This is conditional on you signing a non-disclosure agreement. It's standard procedure. I gave the document a quick read. It was filled with legalese about not speaking ill of the company, not revealing the details of my dismissal, and not taking legal action. They were buying my silence. "I will need my own attorney to look this over," I said. Ethan's jaw flexed. "That is your prerogative, certainly, but this offer is only valid until the close of business today." I nodded, got up, and shook Helene's hand. "Thank you for the opportunity I've had here. I've learned a great deal." I returned to my desk, put my personal belongings in a box, and exited the building. I didn't say farewell to anyone. I didn't cause a disturbance. I simply walked out, my dignity preserved. But as I sat in my car in the lot, I experienced a feeling I hadn't had in years. Not surrender, not shame. I felt clarity. Ethan believed he had won. He thought he had silenced me, disposed of a troublesome employee who refused to cooperate. He was completely unaware of what he had truly accomplished. He had liberated me from my dependency on that job, and that altered the entire equation. I went home and brewed a pot of coffee. Then, I sat down at my kitchen table and began to strategize. I did not sign their agreement. Instead, I contacted Cormac's sister, Kira, who had finished law school 2 years prior and was with a firm in the city. She agreed to have coffee with me on Saturday morning. "They're attempting to purchase your silence," she remarked after reviewing the paperwork. 2 weeks of severance after 5 years of service? That's an insult. What are my options? You can file a claim with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, sexual harassment, retaliation, wrongful dismissal, but you will need evidence. Do you have anything documented? I took out my phone and showed her the text messages. 3 months of communications from Ethan after work hours, invitations to dinner, remarks about my looks, progressively bolder hints about chances for promotion. Kira's eyebrows shot up. "This is very helpful. What about the Reno trip? Is there any documentation of that discussion?" I recorded it. She looked at me, stunned. "You actually recorded your supervisor making that pass at you." I started recording all our private meetings after he cornered me in the break room last month. I suspected something like this might occur. Kira leaned back. "Leona, you have a strong case, but you must be aware of what you're facing. These lawsuits can drag on for years, and Vectrosphere Solutions has the funds for top-tier lawyers." I spent the weekend contemplating my decision. On Monday morning, I contacted the EEOC and submitted a formal complaint. They set up an interview for the next week. That's when Ethan committed his greatest error. Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. "Leona, this is Damien Voss from Vectrosphere Solutions. I am aware that you have sought external legal advice concerning your dismissal." "That is correct."
I need to make something perfectly clear. The non-disclosure agreement you declined to sign had crucial safeguards for both sides. Without them, we might have to adopt a more confrontational approach regarding your termination.
"Meaning what?"
"Precisely. Meaning we possess records of performance deficiencies dating back 2 years, unmet deadlines, customer grievances, insubordination. If this case moves to litigation, we will be obligated to show evidence that your dismissal was
completely warranted and unrelated to any supposed harassment." My stomach tightened. "Are you threatening me?" "I am outlining the legal realities of the circumstances. Our offer is available until the end of today. 2 weeks severance, a mutual non-disclosure, and a clean break. After today, any settlement talks will inevitably be less advantageous." He disconnected before I could say anything else. I called Kira right away. "They're threatening to invent performance problems if I don't withdraw the complaint." "They can certainly try," she said. "But you have 5 years of performance reviews, correct? A flawless record. Until this year. Ethan gave me 2 poor reviews after I began turning down his invitations." "When exactly did those poor reviews begin?" I searched my email archives. March and June. Immediately after I had informed him I had no interest in having dinner with him. Perfect. That is classic retaliation. The timing itself helps prove your case. But when I logged into my email the next morning, something was amiss. My work email was disabled, as anticipated, but my personal emails from my colleagues were missing. Messages I had sent to my personal address, copies of documents, the performance reviews I had saved, everything connected to Vectrosphere Solutions was gone. I contacted my internet service provider. There was a legal request for the removal of data, the support agent explained. A court order. We were required to comply. What court order? You would need to get in touch with the party that made the request for those details. I called Kira in a state of panic. They wiped everything, all of my proof. That's not feasible. You can't just erase someone's private emails. They did. They managed to do it. Kira was silent for a long while. Leona, who exactly are we up against here? How large is this corporation? I searched for Vectrosphere Solutions corporate information online. What I discovered sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just a logistics firm. It was a subsidiary of a far bigger defense contractor. Government ties, Military deals. The kind of corporation that likely had lawyers who knew precisely how to make issues vanish. I spent 3 days in my apartment, feeling utterly defeated. Every option seemed closed off. My evidence had disappeared. My EEOC claim seemed flimsy without it, and Vectrosphere's lawyers had shown they would resort to dirty tactics. But on Wednesday evening, something unforeseen occurred. My doorbell rang. Beatrix from accounting was standing on my porch, looking apprehensive. "I trust you don't mind me stopping by," she said. "I found your address in the employee records before they removed it." I let her in, made some coffee, and waited for her to begin. "I know what took place," she said eventually, "about the Reno trip, about your dismissal. I wanted to let you know that you are not the first one." My coffee mug froze in midair. What are you talking about? 3 years ago, there was another woman, Imogen Doyle. She was in client services. The exact same thing happened to her. Ethan made unwanted advances. She turned him down, and then she was suddenly let go for performance problems. What happened to her? She attempted to contest it, filed claims, got a lawyer. The company swamped her with legal filings until her funds ran out. She finally accepted a settlement just to end it. Beatrix took a flash drive from her handbag, but she saved copies of everything. Every single email, every review, every conversation with Ethan. When she found out from mutual friends what had happened to you, she wanted me to give you this. I looked at the flash drive. Why didn't she present this during her own case? She did, but her lawyer said it wasn't strong enough without more witnesses. The word of one woman against a department director, but 2 women. That establishes a pattern. Beatrix leaned closer. There's more. I've been documenting things too. Every instance I witnessed Ethan behaving unprofessionally, every discussion I overheard. I never knew how to use the information, but I couldn't simply look away from what was going on. She passed me a manila folder. 5 years of records. Dates, times, witnesses. I always knew someone would eventually find the courage to come forward. I opened the folder to find pages of notes in her handwriting, detailed records of Ethan's conduct toward female staff, occasions when he made inappropriate jokes in meetings, cases where he retaliated against women who rejected his advances. "Beatrix, why are you doing all this?" She paused for a moment. "Because I have a daughter. She's 22 and just beginning her career. I don't want her to experience what you and Imogen did, what I experienced when I was younger. Ethan harassed you as well. Different era, different company, but the same situation. I was young. I needed the income. I couldn't afford to resist. I've regretted staying silent every day for 20 years. That evening, I called Imogen Doyle. Beatrix had provided her number. I was wondering if someone would get in touch eventually. Imogen said, when I heard Ethan was still employed there, still in a management role, I knew it was just a matter of time before he did this again. Will you support me? I've been waiting for someone to ask. My settlement has a non-disclosure provision, but it's only for my specific case. If you submit a new complaint, and I'm subpoenaed as a witness, I can give testimony about patterns of conduct. What about retaliation? Imogen laughed, but it was a bitter sound. They already ruined my career once. What more could they possibly do to me? The next morning I called Kira with the new information. Her tone was different this time. Assured. This is a game changer, she said. Multiple victims, documented patterns, retaliation. They can delete your emails, but they can't make your witnesses vanish. What's our next step? We submit an updated complaint, and we take this public. Kira connected me with her firm's senior partner, a woman named Eleanor Hayes, who was an expert in employment law. Eleanor had silver hair and a voice like tempered steel, the type of attorney that corporations genuinely feared. I've dealt with companies like Vectrosphere before, she said in our first meeting. Defense contractors with government ties believe they are above the law, but sexual harassment statutes don't care about your security clearance. We formulated a plan. First, submit an amended EEOC complaint including Imogen's and Beatrix's evidence. Second, contact the local press. Eleanor had connections at the Oregon Sentinel, who specialized in workplace issues. Third, seek out other possible victims using social media and professional platforms. The strategy is to build momentum, Eleanor clarified. After the initial story is published, more women will come forward. They invariably do. But we must proceed with caution. Vectrosphere has already shown they're willing to use underhanded tactics, and we can't risk giving them any leverage. I spent the following week contacting former Vectrosphere employees on LinkedIn, sending carefully phrased messages inquiring about their time with management and if they would be open to sharing their experiences in confidence. The replies were eye-opening. 7 women over a 6-year period had departed from the company in situations connected to Ethan. While not all were harassment situations, several included retaliation for turning down his advances or for reporting his behavior. One woman, Annika Sharma, had been dismissed after she complained about Ethan to Human Resources. Another, Amelia Lowell, had been demoted and ultimately pushed out after she declined to join him at client dinners, where Ethan consistently made inappropriate remarks. The most damning reply came from Tabitha Wheeler, who had been Ethan's assistant for 2 years. She hadn't filed any complaints because she needed the job to care for her disabled mother, but she had kept a detailed record in a personal diary. I maintained meticulous notes because I knew that one day someone would require proof, she wrote. I just lacked the financial security to be that person myself. By Friday, we had gathered statements from 9 women, spanning 6 years. Eleanor submitted the amended complaint on Monday morning. On Tuesday, the Oregon Sentinel ran their investigative piece. The title was, Defense Contractor Accused of Multiple Harassment Incidents. The article detailed the pattern of conduct, the company's handling of the situations, and the wider consequences for the workplace environment in the defense sector. Vectrosphere's stock value fell by 12% before the market closed. Wednesday morning, my phone rang. It was Damien Voss again. Ms. Simmons, I believe we may have acted hastily in our earlier discussions. My client is ready to consider a fair settlement that takes your concerns into account. What kind of settlement? Full salary compensation for 12 months, positive professional references, and a donation to a women's workplace advocacy group of your choice in return for standard non-disclosure conditions. And the other women. That would have to be negotiated individually. I hung up and contacted Eleanor. They're attempting to separate me from the others. A classic divide-and-conquer strategy. They want to silence you before more women step forward. How many calls have you received from journalists? 15 since yesterday. Good. The pressure is mounting. Don't agree to any interviews yet, but inform them that you are represented by legal counsel and are weighing all your options. Thursday came with another update. The Department of Defense declared they were re-evaluating Vectrosphere's government contracts due to the harassment claims. For a corporation that got 60% of its income from federal contracts, this was a massive blow. Friday afternoon, Eleanor called with an update. Vectrosphere's board of directors convened an emergency session. Ethan Reed has been dismissed. Effective immediately. They've also committed to creating a $10 million fund for preventing workplace harassment and compensating victims. What about the other women? They will all receive settlement offers based on their unique situations, and the company has consented to external supervision of its human resources department for the next 5 years. I sat in my kitchen, gazing out the window. 2 weeks prior, I had been fired for declining to share a hotel room with my supervisor. Now, he was the one without a job. But there was one last call I had to make. Saturday evening, 7:30 p.m., I was at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and my phone. I had been contemplating this call for weeks, not purely for retribution, but because there was someone who had a right to know the truth. Karina Reed picked up on the third ring. Hello? Mrs. Reed. My name is Leona Simmons. I formerly worked for your husband at Vectrosphere Solutions. A pause. Then, I saw the news reports. I thought you might have. I'm calling because I believe you should be aware that this wasn't solely about his job. The harassment was not just professional misconduct. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. He informed me on multiple occasions that your marriage was failing, that he intended to leave you. He claimed you didn't understand him, that you had drifted apart. He used that as a pretext to pursue other women. More silence. For years, he's been telling other women your marriage was essentially finished, that he was only waiting for the ideal moment to file for divorce. I felt you deserved to know that. How many women? At least 9 that we have on record. Likely more. Karina was silent for a considerable time. When she finally spoke, her voice had changed. It was harder. Thank you for your call. I have a question for you. Do you possess any proof of him discussing our marriage with you or the other women? Text messages, voice recordings, and several of the other women have similar communications. Would you be willing to provide those to my lawyer? Absolutely. Good, because I initiated separation proceedings this morning, and now I am filing for divorce on the basis of adultery and emotional cruelty. 3 months later, I began my new role at Zenith Data Insights, a medium-sized consulting company in downtown Portland. The pay was better, the benefits were superior, and the CEO, a woman, had personally sought me out after learning about the Vectrosphere case. The settlement funds gave me the freedom to find the perfect role. I had declined several offers from larger corporations that seemed too similar to my previous job. I desired something new, a place where I could rebuild my professional life on my own terms. Ethan's divorce was finalized in February. Karina received the house, half of his retirement savings, and sole custody of their teenage daughter. The recordings I shared were instrumental in proving a pattern of deceit and emotional manipulation that went far beyond his actions at work. He relocated to Boise and found a position with a small construction firm. No managerial duties, no female reports. His new company had done their due diligence. Imogen Doyle contacted me last month to share that she had been employed by a non-profit that champions the rights of workplace harassment victims. She was using her settlement to support their legal aid services. Beatrix was promoted to accounting director at Vectrosphere following Ethan's termination. The new department head was a woman brought in specifically to transform the company culture. I held on to the flash drive Beatrix had given me. Occasionally, I would look at it and recall how isolated I had felt that Tuesday morning when human resources had summoned me downstairs. I had believed I was in a solitary fight against a whole system built to shield men like Ethan, but I was not alone. None of us were. The women who came before me had been gathering evidence, making recordings, and waiting for someone to make the first move. When I finally raised my voice, they were prepared. Sometimes, justice is slow, but it is always worth the wait.